Hola mi gente, this is Giraldo Luis Alvare, and you're listening to Web3 with mi hermano Antonio, bringing to you the exclusives, connecting those data points, connecting the blockchain and everything else in between. So listen today, listen tomorrow, listen again, because it's stuff you want to listen to. Pa'lante. Our lives are very important. Every life, we're very, very important, but it becomes now, what are we doing to inspire so that this life that we brought into this world has a better path, right? More resources, more things, but also an appreciation, because we don't want to raise brats either. We don't want to raise spoiled people. We want to raise people that appreciate, that are grateful, that are humble.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Builders of Web3 show. Today, we have an awesome friend of mine who I met while waiting in line to meet Gary V at Gary's liquor store down in, Springfield, New Jersey.
That's right. That's right.
Giraldo Luis Alvare is a great person to be on here, even though this is Web3 stuff. Web3 is all about community. It's all about the people, and no better person to bring than Giraldo, who has his own podcast focused on culture, familia, overcoming adversity, his legacy, as you can see in his background if you're on YouTube. The podcast is called Siempre Pa'lante, which means always forward. I love it. So welcome.
Gracias, my friend. Gracias, my friend. Gracias, Antonio. I appreciate the love and support. And it was, is serendipity a good word to choose?
Yeah.
It's kind of like just the stars aligned. I mean, it was pretty cool how we met. Shout out to Gary V. Gary, you're always connecting people doing beautiful things. So This is the shameless plug for Gary V, right? But no, I mean, big shout outs to you, Antonio, for the Web3 platform that you have, the show, educating people and giving them insight on the next big thing, right? Because there's a lot of things. I had I took some notes before. I wanted to bring up some things in the conversation. I know you got some questions, but there's a lot of change going on with the Chat GPT, right? Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Chat GPT, AI. And so we can talk about that later. But we want to get into, I mean, this is your show, and I want to kick back here and have a little fun, man, and engage in some cool conversations.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's just start with you telling us a little bit about your background for our listeners, and then we can keep going after that.
Well, my name, as Antonio said, and he pronounced it pretty good, man. It's tough. I know a lot of people always ask. It's Giraldo Luis Alvare. I'm the son of Cuban immigrants who came here for the American dream. And the American dream is the person you're talking to, or like you're hearing me talk, right? As me. I'm the American dream. I'm a product of their hard work, their sacrifices. My sister and I are forever grateful. They came to this country not knowing too much English, and just hard work ethic, discipline, and a passion. The American dream, el sueño americano. And it's been over 50 years. They were able to get their own home. My sister actually at 13, was it? Around 13, I think it's 12, 13. She was able to help with, guide them through the mortgage, which is amazing in itself, that story. Yeah. But my dad, was a machine operator. My mother worked piecework. She sewed children's clothes at a children's clothing factory. I'm not ashamed of that. And that's what made me who I am today, and appreciate those sacrifices of our ancestors. And that's one thing I'm always big on in the show, is always pay it forward. Always remember the people that have paved the way for you to continue paving that way. The journey doesn't stop, and the work doesn't stop. I feel it's when you start a family, and we're going to get into that because we have some great conversations about being dads.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that sets the tone. And what the seeds you plant sets the tone for the next generation and the next generation. And the beautiful thing is, look, we're not perfect by no means. My parents didn't have a playbook. They didn't have a guide. I'm sure your parents didn't. But I think we made out pretty good. I think we turned out okay, right? We're doing well.
I mean, we're right here just recording a podcast, you know, there's a lot of things that are harder that we could be doing.
Right. And I can imagine, I mean, you know, learning about, you know, your upbringing and learning about mine, like as we share these stories, it's amazing. Like we're our ancestors' wildest dream. Like
right,
we're their wildest dream. I mean, you know, just to think about the innovation and technology, Web3. I mean, the things that have progressed over the years.
I come from a mining town where 70% of the people literally work in a coal mine, and their deaths and their rock could literally fall on top of you at any point, you know.
There you go.
And if my mom, I same thing. She came here in 1998. She sacrificed. She left me there with my grandparents so she can come here and build a something for us. And if she never did that, I mean, I'd probably be chopping away in the mine right now.
Look at that. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it's sacrifices that we will always honor those and remember them. So big shout out to the ancestors, big shout out to our parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, all family and friends and mentors. And the show was something that came up, this idea of just getting tired of the day-to-day. I work for a big corporation, and, you know, I've been blessed. Love the company, more than 22 years. But as I kept learning more and being exposed to more and having countless conversations, probably thousands, maybe in the millions now, with people and learning about people, I've always loved the cultural side, the aspect of what their family life was like growing up, and music and the cultural traditions and the spiritual traditions and the holidays, all those things, the food. And it led me to say, you know what, we got to do a better job telling stories. Not a knock to anyone else. I just wanted to create a platform where it was inclusive, where it wasn't just one group, it was all groups. And yes, I do want to learn about the Italian culture, the Ukrainian culture, the Russian culture, the German culture. I love all those cultures, Chinese culture. But I want to start with, hey, I'm going to learn about yours, and I'll share a little bit about my upbringing, growing up Cuban.
Yeah.
And 2020 was kind of the idea. We know what happened in 2020. We don't have to repeat it over and over again. It was just this whole world, you know, this worldwide pandemic. But I picked up where things were like, I put it to the side and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And September 15th, 2021, I launched Siempre Pa'lante, Always Forward. It's a podcast, culture-driven, focused on familia, overcoming adversity and legacy. And it's about highlighting the stories that, you might hear some things that sound similar. I might have a guest like, oh, I heard that on that. But I'm all about digging very deep about the inspirations, about what made the person they are, what made them, because they weren't always that person, right? Like we think about the different people we talk to. Did they wake up one day and become, you know, the designer or the musician or the chef or the life coach? No, their journey wasn't a straight path. It was a zigzag line, sometimes a lot of downs versus ups. We know this as just being the people who we are. We encounter a lot of different things that we face in life. Are we going to face the music and learn how to play that tune? Or are we going to turn away and ignore? But there's going to come a point in time where you're going to have to learn that tune, right? To get to the next level. You want to be average or you want to be next level? So I want to uncover a lot of those things in my show and educate people on culture and break bread and just have some good conversations where by the time you're done and you've gotten a chance to listen to some episodes, you feel like, wow, I never knew about this person. It's pretty cool. You end up Googling them. You end up buying a book.
Right.
Maybe. You end up listening to another podcast they might be on. And that's what it's about. That's the beautiful thing about the American dream, right? El sueño americano. The American dream is not for one group. It's for all of us. And if anything, for people that are listening, big shout out to immigrants and the people that have come to this country because we built this country, you know, and not to mention our indigenous, and to take it a step further, our indigenous peoples that this country was robbed from. And we got to call it what it is, not getting into politics, but it's history.
Right.
And read books. It's just so important to read books and to educate and to not put these phones down. And as much as, technology is great, and you talk a lot about that on your show, but we dial it back. We need to clear our heads, right? We clear our heads by doing different things, walking in the park, taking a breather, maybe doing some working out, maybe just meditating, whatever it is, disconnect. Because when you reconnect, you're stronger, faster. Like just your mind is sharper. So,
right. So yeah, I think what I like about your podcast, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, man. I mean, we're kicking it. Go ahead.
We're always with technology, right? It's going very fast. It's speeding ahead, and we as like tech people have some strengths and stuff. But I learned from one of your episodes on your podcast, and just other stuff that I like to hear is if it's just tech people in the room building the products, you're only building it for a very small percentage of the people. Like, what about, like you say, and not just even if it's tech people, but it can't be just white tech people, right? It needs to include Latinos. It needs to include African Americans, because everybody comes from a different background, and making sure that the technology works for everybody. Like, I don't know where I heard it. It was like, hey, when you're building a tech product, you need some social worker in there in the room to be sitting and telling you, hey, this is how minorities are going to get affected. This is what minorities feel, and this is what they like. So let's make the product all inclusive. And it seems harder in the beginning, in the short term, but in the long run, I really believe that if you make it all inclusive, you're going to have more customers. You're going to be more profitable in the long run. And I think that's a very important conversation that needs to happen in tech, because a bunch of white guy nerds just building products, it's not sustainable. And that's what's brought us into the current situation that we're in. Tech is very messy. People are getting laid off because it was very focused on profits and short term. And now it's like, with a recession looming, I mean, you open up LinkedIn, there's layoffs left and right.
That's true. And you bring up a good point about bringing more people into the conversation, people of color. And it's important to understand the numbers don't lie. I mean, the purchasing power of Black, Latino, Latina, Latine, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian. I mean, that's all different groups, right? The purchasing power. Latino, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community, more than 62 million and growing in the United States. So there lies purchasing power in the billions and trillions of dollars. So that in itself, it makes you scratch your head sometimes when the people buying the product sometimes are not in those conversations. That's a head scratcher, right? Because they're the ones paying the money for those phones. And let's be honest, the current, whatever phone is almost, some of them are over $1,000. For a phone. I mean, it's a mini computer. I mean, this is what the evolution has come down to. It's a mini computer. You do anything and everything that can pretty much do, which is amazing. But I like that you brought that up, because people designing, I mean, you think about the ingenuity, think about our countries and the lack of resources in some of these areas has driven people to be more creative and to utilize things that we couldn't even imagine, like how to rebuild computers, how to hack the system to get Wi-Fi, internet, right? I mean, that you're smiling ear to ear because because reading these stories and seeing videos and documentaries, to me, that's so inspiring, because we were, in a sense, we were fortunate to being raised in this country and having access, to things that necessarily back at our homes. I mean, I can tell you, the dictatorship regime in Cuba is insane. It's sad. It's sad, it's, to me, it breaks my heart, Cuba tiene que estar libre. And I say that Cuba has to be free. Like it's about time. And the people that come out of the doctors, the engineers, the scientists, I mean, they read these books back and front. Like, who reads a book now, right? Like, if you really think about it, back in our countries, they take a book and it's like, all right, so this is to learn about X career, right? they'll read it back and front because there's nothing else they have. They don't have access to Google. They don't have access. So they digest this information, memorize it. And that's powerful. That's powerful.
But that's why the people who come out of those countries, like every time I see a kid who comes from Macedonia and works here as a waiter for a number of years, makes documents, ends up doing something, they're always like successful because they push through that kind of adversity, right? Like I was brought here, my mom brought me here, so she went through that hard work so I can have it easy. But the people, like you said, who come from those countries and the immigrants, and that's why you see a lot of the top tech companies and other, like what I watch a lot of Shark Tank. It's always some immigrant who figures something out, that hard works, it's what builds character. And that's why I love my immigrants.
Listen, I mean, we are the product of beautiful families and cultures, immigrant cultures. And that, I mean, if the situation probably was a little better, a little different, we wouldn't be in this country. But we have to face the facts, like as imperfect. Let's call it what it is. This country is not perfect by no means.
Right.
This is the greatest country on earth because you can come here and you can make a name for yourself however which way you want to.
Right.
You want to wake up every day and work a 9 to 5, punch the clock, and that brings happiness to you. By all means, do it. But if you want more and you want to run the company, you can hustle your way to that too. Now, the paths are completely different. One can be much easier and one will have its challenges. But everything is possible here. And it's about building a network, right? Your network is so important. Networking. I mean, we were networking online. We were online, physical line, and I want to clear that up, right? Like clear that up for the millions of listeners out there. Online, we were standing online, and Antonio was kind enough, turned around, introduced himself to my nephew and I. Shout out to my nephew Chris, who came out with me. We waited. Let's see, what was it? We got there 11:15, 2:30 is when we finally saw Gary V. But I look at it like this: while we stood online, we got to network, we got to talk to different people. You even got an interview.
I did get interviewed. I'm waiting for my episode.
So the cool thing about it, I was looking at Gary's feed, like something popped up. That same guy that interviewed you, they posted his video talking to Gary.
No way.
Yeah, he was talking his story. It was pretty cool. And I said, wait a second. That's the guy that interviewed Antonio for content. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. But I mean, that's the thing, the power of networking. And you hear this saying, and I'm sure you've heard it so many times, it's not what you know, is who you know. I challenge that. I take it a step further. Okay, so I know Antonio and he vouches for me. And you get me that foot in the door. But if I don't know what I'm doing and I start failing like crazy,
then you made both of us look bad.
You made both people look bad now. And then your chances of doing more become harder, not say impossible. Right. And I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, of course it helps. It's going to help me get the interview versus if I didn't know anybody, I have to wait online. Sometimes, yes, that help does, that little extra helps. But I feel like when you do have an in, that's the hour where preparation and opportunity meet, right? You're planning and preparation and opportunity strikes, be ready. And it'll happen if you did everything you can. I mean, yes. And the important thing is to give it all you got. Like I tell people, leave everything on the table. Don't leave anything back, don't hold back. And it's tough because in this age of opportunity, people are getting more savvy and everything is on the internet. YouTube is like, you want to learn anything, put it in YouTube. Google it. Go to YouTube. Yeah, heck, TikTok is starting to become one of those resources too, has become.
Oh yeah, TikTok is huge. So I think that's why you can learn anything on the internet. And that's why my podcast, while it's about the technology, I like to focus on the people behind it, on the community, because like you said, anybody can go and learn anything online. But how do you relate to people? How do you network? How do you bring people together, right? Like if you're building a product, you're not gonna know how to code and design. So you need to figure out how to, right? It's all about relationships and communication. And I know that's one of the things that you are really good at. But how does one person kind of network maybe with different cultures outside of like their little bubble? I mean, like me and you met at Gary because he has a global reach. But for somebody like maybe, let's say, just use me as an example, who started recently with the podcast, right? I want to learn about different cultures, but if I didn't run into you there by accident, this would have never happened. Do you have any advice on reaching beyond your own like little bubble?
It starts with, who do you want to engage with, right? What community do you first want? Have a plan. Because you just can't go, well, you know what? I'm just going to go to this, heavy metal concert tonight, this local heavy metal concert. That might not be your thing. And
Right.
nothing against, like, look, everybody has their own thing. And I use that as an example. It could be hip hop or whatever. It can be a, different, a baking club. I don't know. You got to find and nothing against baking, because my wife, big shout out to Andrea, and my little bean, Ariana. Love you. Daddy loves you. But my wife loves to bake. So she's probably going to be like, what are you talking about? But no, seriously, you got to find, what is your passion? What do you really enjoy? Like, I love culture, but I'm still narrowing it down because it's a journey in the process. That's the beauty of this whole thing. Like, as you get more into it, like being into my second season now, I'm growing and evolving more, and I'm really starting to look at, okay, I can narrow some things down, do some short series, do some different things that get my juices going. And so I feel like that's the first step, right? Understanding what is it that you truly enjoy, so it's not a burden, because this does involve work. People forget, like they hear us talking and we're having a good time. The show still has to be edited. The show still has to be promoted, or there's a lot of layers to this stuff. It's not just like, there's time, and when you invest time, you can't get it back. Time is the most valuable resource. People talk a lot about health. Yes, you need health, so then you can invest time in. But time is just as important, because when you invest the time, people respect that. And you got to look at, what are the areas that you really are passionate about? So if you love Web3, find those communities and start engaging in those conversations. See who's leading the way in that, but also see who's next. See who's up and coming. See the other folks around, because I feel like, sometimes, and more times than not, the mistake is that, let me go shoot for the stars. There's nothing wrong with that. Listen, a lot of my guests, I literally, between emails and phone calls, I did not pull punches. Some of the guests, I had to wait a year before I got them for season 2, because it was just a matter of, first of all, who the heck is Giraldo? Like, who are you, right? So people look at, like, they don't know who you are. So you start having to build that rapport. And a lot is trust and being genuine and transparent and authentic. What is your show about? Like, you have to really, what is your mission, your show? That it has to come out of your mouth without hesitation. Like, culture driven, focused on familia, overcoming adversity and legacy. Those are my passions. It comes out like without hesitation at the drop of a dime. So that's the thing, understanding really what your area is that you love, your passion. Do you love food? Boom. Start going into what food, though, because that's general. So you start honing in on a specific area, and believe it or not, there's so many billions of people, 7 to 8 billion people on this planet.
Yep.
Not everybody likes the same thing. So you will find someone that, if you love food, and let's say you love cheesecake, okay, but you love chocolate covered icing cheesecake with sprinkles. That's rare, right? But you will find people that enjoy that. You can
Right.
start the conversation on cheesecake in general and say, what are your favorite cheesecake? And then start interviewing chefs and interviewing. Then there's there's a conference for everything.
Yes.
So there's a cheesecake conference. The cheesecake conference, the cheesecake con, whatever. So those are the things I think that help you. And then once you start narrowing down, it's the journey. Because as I'm into season 2, I'm learning that there's deeper conversations I can have on certain topics. And yeah, when you look at the show, it's like a rainbow of different colors. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm proud of it. But I look at it and go, how could I even hone in more on certain things that I'm passionate about? So
yeah, I think same thing with what I do. Like I knew this is what I want to do because I was listening back to my old episodes and I'm actually enjoying it. I'm like, oh, that's a great insight. I didn't, because when you're recording in the moment, you don't catch everything. And then listening back afterwards, if you don't enjoy your own episode, you can't expect other people to probably enjoy it, right? So that was kind of like my first test. But definitely a lot of learning to do. I mean, even one of my episodes, I was like talking for the first like 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be interviewing. This is not about you. It's about the other person, right?
I do the same thing. Listen, disclaimer. I've learned to pause, to listen, to stop. Yes, I just jumped in real quick because I wanted to share this with you because it's so true. Like we find ourselves caught up because we're enjoying the conversation. And I want to add something real quick to this. You gotta be uncomfortable. We gotta be comfortable to be uncomfortable. Like what you did, and we bring back to how we met. You turned around, you introduced yourself and put your hand out there and shook my hand. You gotta do those things because a lot of people are afraid of social interaction in this age, right? So take advantage of that, and also understand that every episode is going to get better. Every interaction is going to get better. Everything you do is going to it's practice, right? You're honing in on those skills. Right. One thing I've learned is to not just appreciate the journey, you celebrate the wins, you celebrate the great things that happen, but also look at something that you felt like, wow, this was a challenging episode. Like I've had some episodes where the editing process, like I've worked with my editor and I'm like, shout out to Santiago. And I said, man, this one was rough. And then the vibe was weird. Like, I'm trying to stay the course, asking certain questions and really like, man, it's pulling it out of the guests. And I felt like, wow, this is going to be an amazing show. Like I'm excited about the guests. But what I've learned is to go with it in the interview and then learn from it too, because the gold will be there. Just keep listening. And, some of these episodes it's that aha moment, right? Like that moment that you're like, whoa, it got real good right here. Right. Because a lot of times when you don't have those prep calls, right? Because I try to have them. I try to talk to the people. You really don't know some of these folks. You don't know these people. So you're unpacking. You're like, all right, let's talk a little bit. Let's learn a little bit about. And as I'm waiting for there's something they'll say, and then just keep going. And I'll bring that back. And those things have helped me tremendously because it's opened the door for other things. And it's also shown the guests like, wow, he's listening. Yeah. And they appreciate their time. So those times are, they're gold. And you mentioned, we talked about other tips is when you're out there, when you meet people, really ask those key questions, like have things in your mind set because it's seconds. Like they say elevator pitch. Elevator pitches, 10 seconds is a lot. But if you make an impact on someone and you have a cool conversation, like it leads to other things. Look, we're recording right now, right? We're doing the show. It's opening doors and opportunities. And then also understand that with people, we talked about time, ask for 15-minute call, 10-minute call.
Right.
Have your notes, have things ready. And I've done this. And people, it's interesting because the people that want to stay talking to you more, they'll give you the cues. They'll let you know. And the people sometimes, that's all they got, 10 minutes or 15.
Yeah.
But hey, at least they know that you value their time as much as, you value yours. So,
right. I think one of the things that I'm really thinking about while we're talking about this is, it takes the practice. I mean, even Gary Vee talks about it. He's like, your first 10 episodes are probably going to suck, right? They're not going to be bad, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Afterwards, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But the really important thing I want to highlight to one out there, if you're going to get one thing, is don't wait until you're 100% ready to start something, whether it's a podcast or producing content or writing. You're never going to be that. And I spent a year or two during pandemic started, right? I'm like, oh, I should do a podcast. But then you start doubting yourself. Well, what about this? What about the microphone? Oh, let me get a microphone stand before I do this. And then you see 6 months have passed. You haven't done anything. And then one day I just sat down. I reached out a person on LinkedIn who I really wanted to speak to. Hey, let's just record a conversation. Like, no prep. Like, I like the Joe Rogan experience. Like, this is the Antonio Ivanovsky experience. Like, let's just talk, see where we get to. And of course, I did some research on him, and we had a great conversation. I had a great time.
yeah.
My camera, like, if you look at probably one of my first episodes, it's a dark room and you can't see like half my face, but it's about starting, man. And it's going to get better. Right now I have, a couple lights here, I have my microphone that I'm setting up, and slowly you'll get there, but you have to keep pushing. And also the other thing is, a lot of people give up too quickly. You do 2-3 episodes, and they're like, this is hard. It's harder than it looks. You have to enjoy the process, the journey, right, of getting better and learning more. And like I said, I need to listen more. Gary Vee is the one who always gets shit for this. They're always like, Gary, why are you always interrupting your guests? And why are you always just talking? He's like, because I love to talk. And he's been doing this for 15 years and he's still learning, so just start, man.
I agree. Just hit record and that's it. And listen, right. You're gonna have moments. You're going to have these moments where, like, wow. You talking about that. I remember the one of the recent episodes I did, and it was more the recap. I'm just doing something a little new, trying things, right, to see what works, what sticks. And after season 2, after the first 5 episodes, I said, let me do a recap and then go on a break. So try to give myself a little room to breathe and not burn myself out. So in this recap, the goal was to go live, go on YouTube, broadcast, start doing that end, right? And because now the show I pre-record and then get it edited and then publish it, right? Launch it. Well, everything and anything that can happen happened leading up to it, right? I didn't have a person to interview me. People were busy. I mean, things happen. I wasn't upset, but I was like, okay. And then leading up to it, you being a dad, you notice the little one, right? My little one started school, and she was starting getting sick. Like every other day, we were like calling the doctor and stuff. And I was like the last of the Mohicans. I was the last one. Like I was holding it down. I was still good. My health was good. And that Thursday, I started feeling a little funny. That Friday, I woke up and I started feeling like, man, and I'm fighting it. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to get sick. Nope, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to. And it literally was, I ended up doing an IG live because the YouTube thing, something was wrong with the connection. Everything was. So
always goes wrong with.
Right. So I said, IG live, I've done these before. These are easy. Just hit record, whatever. And then I'll just have my script. I'll do what I do. If somebody jumps on, great. And I did it. And it was literally, I drank so much tea, doing anything that I could, like, to keep my senses going, right? And it worked out. But it was like, if you don't know, if you just give up, then you don't know. And the worst thing that can happen, it would come out terrible, right? It was all right. Well, it came out terrible. The next one's gonna. Well, your bar is so low, right? It's only gonna get better, right?
Well,
That's the
only way is up.
Yeah, the only way is up. But no, it actually was pretty cool. You know, some people joined, and this guy, he goes by the name of Crazy Freddy. I got to give him a shout out.
Yeah,
he makes custom domino tables.
Okay.
Really cool. And he's one of these guys like I just encountered, I think via TikTok or Instagram, and he just loved the show. He kept giving me encouragement online, and I appreciate that. He wasn't, I mean, Lord knows, you know, there's tons of trolls out there, and there's I don't even engage, like I delete, like I don't even, I've been fortunate because I don't bring that into my thought process. Like I don't think, I just think good vibes, right? But they're out there. But this guy was really cool, and I said, you know what, if he jumps on, I'm going to ask him to join the IG. And he accepted. He came on the camera.
Wow.
And we had a really cool conversation. I said, hey, you mind staying out for a little bit? He's like, yeah. So he asked me some questions and it went off with a hitch. So I've learned that, going back to, like you said, like you got to start. And even within the process, you're going to learn because like you said earlier, you focus on Web3, but this discussion is a bigger conversation. Right, we're going to talk about certain things like that because I'm sure we'll discuss that. But at the same time, this is honing in on a lot of other things, and it makes us better. It fine tunes us. It sharpens the blade. I love that saying. You sharpen the blade so you can be ready. You know, because the time's going to come where you'll have a guest that is not just dabbling in the Web3. They might be dabbling in different things, and by you understanding other areas, it makes you even sharper in your questioning. It makes you sharper in what you do. So,
no, 100%. I mean, I think one thing is about the culture and community is even just starting a product, right? We're moving away from that ad supported model. I think in the future is going to be a lot of what they call like the 1,000 fans theory, right? If you have 1,000 people who give you, I think it's $10 a month for your product, you're making that's $100,000 a year. So that's why it's so important. I mean, if people who start an NFT project, if you can sell 1,000 NFTs at $100, right? That's out of 1,000 NFTs might sound like a lot, but there's 8 billion people in the world. Like if those people are willing to support you. So that's why it's so important. But like you said, the other stuff, like the whole artificial intelligence and that it's trending now, right? All of that is super relevant. So you have to kind of do all encompassing. It can't, like a lot of people, you go on LinkedIn, like, hey, Antonio, you were talking about data. Now you're talking about the blockchain. Like, why are you switching? First of all, I can switch if I wanted to, right? It's my content, so I can do whatever I want.
Amen. That's what I'm talking about.
I have a lot of interest, right? I can't just be. I'm not right. I'm not a machine just being focused on one thing. I love everything. The second thing is the things are more connected than you think. Everything on the blockchain is data, right? I interviewed Raphael Hai, who my episode is coming. He's a designer. He talks about user experience. If you're designing a website, a product, you need a designer, right? So you can't just be very narrow focused. I mean, you could, but I think opening up to other people and other visions is what's going to kind of like make you a well-rounded individual.
And they're all connected.
Right. Everything's connected.
Everything's connected. So you said data. Data is the queen and king. It rules. Like you have data, the things you can do, because you can start analyzing trends. You can start analyzing demographics, users, what the likes and dislikes. Data is amazing. And then you start connecting it to the blockchain. You start connecting it to Web3. You start connecting it to AI. But all these things, Antonio, you know what the interesting piece of all this, people have these conversations about, oh, AI is going to take over and robot. Look, you're going to need a human being to program and maintain. Yeah. So as long as we need to program and maintain, we'll be all right.
Well, I mean, even there is, now, I mean, there's just stuff is going crazy where you could have a computer learn how to program itself and kind of like, but I mean, then you're getting into like some crazy stuff, because who knows where they're going to program, right? So I don't know how much like crazy one would want to get into that, but it's also, I think nothing's going to take away the human connection.
Exactly.
People are using like AI is going to be a community manager, community social media moderator, or whatever. I'm like, it's that person on the other side is telling you something. You always have that. I mean, like I went out with my wife and my boy yesterday, and just having a conversation with the waiter at the restaurant. I mean, just something about that can't be replaced. I mean, like technology is gonna get you so far, but I think there'll always be a room for the people, and it might not be even in coding, right? Let's say even if it learns how to code one day, which we're still far away from that. Everything we're seeing is prototypes. But you're going to need that kind of like that human touch. And maybe humans won't code, but they'll need creativity, because you still need, like you said, you need to tell the AI what to do, right? If you wanted to write you a story, you need to tell it what kind of a story to write for you. It's not just gonna magically come up with everything. So
it's like the algorithm you hear in social media, right? The algorithm that kind of it dictates what goes viral, or what, or the hashtags and all those things, whatever it does, right? Like but there's a person behind it,
right?
That switches it up so it's quote unquote fair, supposedly, right? Because I remember when Instagram first started, you can get followers like it was. I mean, but I think with everything that first starts, there's a little hesitation. People dive in. I love all this stuff. Like me, I'm game. Like, let's go. Like, let's learn about it. When I started reading about Chat GPT, I seen this pop up everywhere. I'm curious. Like, you're way more into this. Like, what's your thoughts about that?
I think the stuff we see online, it's cherry picked. A lot of times, like people think it's like, oh, you just ask this something and just give you a magic answer. I've gone either the one that generate image or the Chat GPT. It's not as easy to use, because a lot of times you give it something and just gives you complete nonsense. I think the second thing is, when you Google something, let's say, right? So my podcast is not affiliated with Google or anything, just because I work there, right? This is all my own thoughts.
Disclaimer.
Right, disclaimer. I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
But when you open something on a website, at least you can see who the author is. You can see where the source came from. With the new tool, it just gives you an answer. But you don't know if it's good advice. You don't know if it's bad advice. You don't know where it came from. You don't know how it came up with it, right? It doesn't mean it's bad or good, but you don't have that verifiable thing behind it, because it tells you something, and you can't. I mean, you're just gonna take it for granted. And I think that's very important. We'll see where it's gonna go, because the way you ask it a question, it just fills in the rest of the sentence basically for you. It doesn't go out there, search the truth, and find it for you. So I'll give you a good example that I've seen is asking just staying with COVID, because this was very like controversial, I guess, and people felt different ways about it. I ask it, are COVID vaccines safe for you? Or why are COVID vaccines safe for you? It's going to produce me an answer why COVID vaccines are safe for you. If I ask it, hey, why is the COVID vaccine bad for you? It's going to give me an answer, why is the COVID vaccine bad for me? Because what it's trying to do is, it's kind of like, when you're writing something in Microsoft Word or somewhere, and it gives you like, oh, do you want to complete the sentence this way? That's what Chat GPT and a lot of the other tools are doing. Is you're supposed to be the main writer, and it's supposed to help you finish the thought. So if you ask it if COVID is bad for you, it's going to give you why it's bad. If you ask it why is it good for you, it's going to give you why it's good. Yeah. It's so a lot of bias is introduced into that. But unfortunately, a lot of people are unfamiliar maybe with the technology, and then you go and you see it and it's having this full-on conversation and people start freaking out. They don't know what's happening. That's why it's very important to get educated. Right. You don't need to know how to learn to code it, but take the time to understand how it was built, what it was trained on. Even if you go on OpenAI, which is the company behind it, they tell you, don't take any of this for granted, right? This is not fact. There's no fact checking before it gives you the answer. We've just trained it on, I don't even know how many millions of data, and you can't just take everything for granted that you see. I mean, that should be your number one on the thing on the internet. Everything you see, you should just trust but verify, like they say. Don't take for granted. So that's kind of where I am. I think technology is technology, but as anything new, it has capability to be misunderstood and abused, and it's going to come down to it's going to come down to people.
Yeah, it does. It always goes back to people, because you think about who's behind the technology, right? And then here's another layer. What's this person like? What's their culture? We talk about earlier, right? Their upbringing. Did they grow up in a warm environment where it's a family environment? Did they grow up in an environment where tragedy has faced them all the time and they were the first to overcome, but they have a lot of trauma, generational trauma. So this was their outlet. So are they doing this for good reasons? Are they doing this for other reasons? Are they doing this to get back? Revenge? Who knows? I mean, you watch these movies about the person being bullied in high school, you hear the story, right? And they turn around and they become a successful person and they're a movie star or whatever the storyline, right? It's like the cliche. But nobody talks about that from the time they were bullied to the time they became successful, that in between. Right. So that's what concerns me, is who's pulling the strings. And we know some of the people not. We know some of the people pulling the strings. I mean, because we see, right? But sometimes the people we don't, that's what's scary. Right. Pushing the buttons to control habits and trends and things like that. Those are the things. And I feel like that's where this can really do more harm than good, because before, back growing up, something became popular because maybe some person wore it or something, or it became a trend. It was a little bit more natural. In today's age, it's pushed on you every 2 seconds.
Everything is pushed.
Everything. You see YouTube, the ads, depending on what you're watching, those ads cater to that.
Right.
My little daughter she loves watching different things on YouTube Shorts, right? For kids, like real kid friendly. And in between those commercials, I'm blown away at the stuff that's thrown at her. And the funny thing is she could care less. So she'll go, Papi, hit the button. Hit the button, skip. She doesn't know it's skip. I go, skip. She goes, the button. Yes. I said, all right, cool. So
my boy can't talk yet. So, but when he gets a commercial and he's still young, I'm like, why is he watching like this Kohl's commercial for 35 seconds?
Right. The Kohl's commercial, or like
booking or dolls. I hate when it's those pills, man. It's always some new pill company, and
those slip through, right? Those slip through. I'm like, I don't know, but go ahead, man. I had to.
So, I think going beyond that, who's pulling the strings? Let's say in a perfect world, everybody has good intentions. But if you think about how this AI models are trained, you're fed the internet basically and things that are being written. But most of them is all the English content, right? So the computer is learning only from English speaking writers. What about all the people who don't speak English, right? There's Eastern, let's just start with ancient Chinese civilization. I mean, that came first, right? Those texts, some of it is, translated and might make it somehow into it. But there's millions and millions of transcripts that are never included. My country, Macedonia, we have 2 million people. Very small percentage of those people actually produce content on the internet, and then the ones that produce content on the internet, very percentage do it in English. So maybe you're taking out of the whole country, it's like 0. Let's say 0.05%. So yeah, maybe you have good intentions, but everything you're training the computer on, you're training it on a very, very small percentage of the actual world population. Even though if you look online, it's going to be like hundreds of millions of texts that it's being trained on. Yeah, but if there's a trillion texts out there in the whole world, and you're training only 100 million, you're barely getting like 1%, not even 1% of the world. And that's the one thing we have to be careful of. And also, I mean, a lot of the internet is honestly, it's porn content. It's all about porn. It's all about trolls and troll farms. And those are the people that are allowed, are the people who are minority. I mean, this happened like now 5-6 years ago, and we've come a long way since then. But Facebook, I think once they released an AI similar like that, they put it on Twitter, and they said, "Hey, go and learn and become a human. Let's see what kind of like a person, quote unquote, right? Not obviously a person, you're going to become." Within like 30 minutes or so, it became a Nazi. It was like started tweeting like anti-Jewish tweets and stuff like that, and they shut it down, right? And now all these new systems are being built on top of it, and you're trying to protect people and protect from false information. But again, we're including such a small percentage of the population, and it's a very hard problem to solve, right? I'm not saying, oh, these people, we're going to solve this, because what, are you going to go out and translate all of the texts that exist in the world one day? But we're definitely not there yet. So those are the kind of the things that we have to think about.
No, and that's a great observation and insight on what you just stated. Going back to the translation, things get lost in translation.
Right, exactly.
Right, that lost in translation, even with more than 62 million Latinx, Hispanic, Latino, Latine, Latinas in this country, things still get misrepresented. Still, things get taken out of context, because within the cultures, there's Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Chile, Honduras, Brazil, on and on, Spain, like all these different cultures, right? Panama. Each culture within country has their traditions, their dialects, their language. And
right,
when you try to generalize something, it just loses. It's not the same. It's not apples to apples, as they say. No, it's not. And the same thing with Macedonia. I could imagine that by the time you get down to those select few that are translating, what was their upbringings?
Oh, yeah.
What did they learn, right? The traditions. They might miss something totally different from an elder speaking something very important, and totally miss the gist of that entire book, that knowledge and that wisdom. So it goes back. I've shared this earlier, and I'll share it again and constantly. Culture is so important, whatever conversation we're having, because that ultimately impacts things directly and indirectly. If not immediately, down the road it will, because now we're talking about these programs and things that are built start with good intention, we hope, right? They start. But what has happened over the years in this country, from, I would say, it was going on for a while, but the misinformation and the slander has run rampant online, and people let it go because of likes, because of views, because of media. But it's sad, because let's call things what it is. If this happened, this happened. Oh, because it didn't favor you. Oh, that's not true. So we have people in very high positions. Again, I'm not going to go there. We're going to keep this conversation grounded, because I can start going there. But
we'll save that for the next episode.
Right. That's part 2. But no, seriously. I mean, we all have that. And it's not just this country. There's everywhere. Like, things happen, and then people don't want to accept the fact, like, this happened on this day, and then they just want to no,
erase history.
Erase history. And you cannot do that. And that's a tragedy in itself. So I am very hopeful. I always have hope. I have a lot of faith because you cannot lose faith in people and human beings and the human race to do good. And I feel that there is hope in this. And I feel through these conversations that we're having, a few people are going to listen to it, then a few more people, then then it goes into the millions. As the millions listen, right? They spread the word. Hey, listen to that latest episode on Web3 that we're talking about. and if it triggers that one simple ideology or thought, we did what we set out to, right? To inspire and encourage hope and encourage positive vibes. And that's what we aim to do, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a lot of fun. I know. Do you have a little more time so that we can chat a little more? I know.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to ask you a little bit about, like, we've talked about it a lot offline. Being a dad, right? You have a little one, right? And like you said before, you mentioned it before. Everything for you right now, come on, right? Hour and a half commitment. You prepare beforehand. After this, right? I mean, yeah, you have an editor. I have a person who's going to edit this, but you still have to communicate with them. So you spend 2 to 3 hours. You have a day job. I have a day job. How is that, like, balancing all of that? Because every minute you spend on here, you're not spending it with your child, with your wife, and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. That's an amazing question. And it see, all these conversations is like data in the blockchain. So you see, everybody, we're using language and connecting it universally.
Right.
I talked about time earlier. For everyone listening, I talked about the value of time being currency. And you ultimately have to take that hard look at your body of work, your family, everything you're doing, and go, is this something I want to continue to do? Because you will have moments where you will doubt it.
Right.
You'll be spending probably way too much time on one episode and you're like, what the, like, but I feel why are you doing this? It goes back to, why are you doing this? And is this worth it? And then investing the time in certain things more than others. You start allocating it and seeing, right? You run your own data on yourself.
Right.
If you spent, like, I remember doing my social media when I first started, and I wasn't really online a lot. I wasn't really on the platforms, and I'll spend so much time on posts. And my wife is like, why are you spending so much time? Like, you're starting. You even told me you didn't get a lot of likes on this. You just got a couple likes. Why? Like, just keep cranking it out. If it's not perfect, it's okay. And it registered eventually, right? Because I'm a perfectionist. but I feel that all these things, you start mapping things out. And I feel as you keep going, you look at everything and you go, what's really more important? And yes, there have been times on the weekend I'm working on something and my wife's like, we gotta go. And you're nodding your head because you get it. Like, it's one of those things. I feel really looking at it. Where can you dial it back? Where can you turn it up? And that's a process in itself. That's the part of the journey. But time is so crucial. And I feel when you invest the time, invest in the things that, yes, if you love doing this, you're going to want to do it every day. Eventually, I'm working towards building a media platform that inspires, that does good, that promotes good products, that promotes good companies, that promotes amazing people. That's the goal. And it's culturally inclusive. Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian, white, you name it. I want everyone on this platform to share their stories. And then, let's have fun with it. What are you pushing right now? You got a book? Let's talk about the book. You're building a new platform. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the new movie you just came out with. That comes secondary, which is interesting because a lot of times I focus on those things. When I do my research, I listen to, if you've been on 10 episodes, right, of 10 different podcasts, I listen to those.
Yeah.
And I listen to everything that they did not ask you. and compare. So if they did ask a question, let's say the question was similar about culture, but you just kept giving the same answer, I'll layer the question. So I don't see, and this is the thing, Antonio, I don't hide anything. Like, as you see, I'm an open book. I'm sharing things that work for me.
Right.
And heck, who knows? I hope it works for others, but this is just trial by error. And that's the beauty.
It's all about putting in that work, man. And I think ultimately what I heard from you is all comes down to the purpose, and right, it's your passion. And one of the things that I hope, if like me and you are recording this right now when I could be doing other things, or like I said, I'm not hanging out with my son right now, is I hope that one day he listens to this episode and he learns something, He will. That's what it's about, because I lost my grandma in 2014, back before I was into this huge technology thing, recording, taking pictures of stuff. Even the pictures I recorded, they're on some old computer that broke and I don't have it. And I look back at it, I'm like, I have like 1 or 2 videos of like my grandma that I just keep like watching those every time I want to remember her. I mean, of course, she's always in here and here. But that's why I like doing this. I want in 50 years somebody to listen to this and be like, that was a great episode that came out in like 2022, and the year is like 2072, because
there you go.
That's how much I love this, because I want to be doing this for the next 20, 30 years or so. And hopefully that my son and the generations that you talked about, right, that we can provide something for them. And going one step, I mean, even, right, I always struggle with this, like, how much time do you want to spend? Do you want to invest in this? People, maybe you get 10 views, 20, then you start building up. But one day my son is going to grow up. He's going to start going to school. He's going to find himself girlfriend. He's going to get married, All it's going to be left is me, my wife, and then whatever else I build, right? So that's why I think as a dad, I'm trying to also take time for myself and do things that I'm passionate about, I see a lot of parents back in Macedonia who, when their kids are born, they drop everything. And then once their kids move out of the house, they go into that crisis mode, like, shit, what the hell do we do now with our lives? Yeah. And I'm very attached to my boy. Like, I want to spend every minute with him, but then also I'm trying to learn and break that mold. I'm like, okay, he's going to be his own man. I'm my own man, and trying to build stuff for that. But man, those are always the dad thoughts that.
Yeah, no, and this is a great. Yeah, no, but this is important. This is things that people out there, of course, fathers, dads, padres, they understand. And if you're not, and you're working towards it, or one day you will be, whatever's in your cards, right? They say. I feel like, yes, we're building something. It's completing us. It's bringing us joy and happiness, because the journey, we talk about this journey and the time we invest, and how much time do you invest in all this? It's all an investment. But the hope is, and we thrive off that, is that our generations will learn from this. I mean, who would have thought, right? Think about our ancestors, right? Who would have thought that we would have crossed paths, right?
Right.
Macedonia and Cuba. Very, very distant from each other. And we're here having this great conversation. We got to meet. We're going to break bread, because, after this episode, we got to go pick a spot.
Yes.
Bring the wives so they can.
I'll take you to some good Macedonian food.
Hey, listen, and you know what? That's what I was just going to ask you. I want to eat some good Macedonian food. So yes, you read my mind. But that's the thing with it. It's honoring that. And we know that when you instill this good, this love that you're instilling in your son, and the love I'm instilling in my daughter, that it speaks in volumes, because they'll grow up with that and cherish that.
Right.
I can say this, like, people that are seeing this, if you're hearing and can't see, you're driving, you're just, releasing, getting home from work, or driving into work, whatever you're doing, working out. My logo is my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Francisco Victor Alvare Arce. May he rest in peace, rest in power. He's looking down and probably going, what on God's earth are you doing with my likeness, doing a show,
using my good looks for your logo?
¿Qué tú estás haciendo? Like, what is your, like, but I felt he represents, like the logo represents him and all my ancestors, all that have paved the way. And Siempre Pa'lante means always forward. No matter what we have going on in our lives, as fathers, we are going to have those moments where like anything and everything that can go wrong goes wrong. But what do we got to do? Siempre Pa'lante, always forward. I said that yesterday after my daughter had a lot of energy yesterday. I'll leave it at that. Very challenging and a lot of energy. She means well.
Yeah.
My wife put her to sleep, right? Put her to bed. So as we went downstairs, we were doing laundry. As I'm walking up the stairs, I was like, babe, you know how it is. Like the show, Siempre Pa'lante, always forward. She just started laughing so much. But it's so true. You have to keep going and appreciate, like, there's the dad guilt. You hear mom's guilt. Moms have guilt.
Yeah, of course.
Dad guilt too. We just bury it. We just bury it, right? Like that whole like being a man and we bury it. But I do, like, if I'm doing something, like, man. So to bring all this together with time and being a dad and everything, being a dad makes us better. Because now it's not about us. The day that you held your son in the hospital for the first time, that's it.
Yes, definitely.
Not that our lives
the switch.
Like our lives are very important. Every life, we're very, very important. But it becomes now, what are we doing to inspire so that this life that we brought into this world has a better path, right? More resources, more things, but also an appreciation, because we don't want to raise brats either. We don't want to raise spoiled people. We want to raise people that appreciate, that are grateful, that are humble. We hope, right? We hope we instill those things and they become good human beings.
Yeah,
very good.
That's what matters at the end, my friend.
That's it.